This was a magic trick no one could figure out. Just a white cloth and a chair, and somehow it made a person float in midair. The man stared wide-eyed, but he couldn't crack the secret. He was desperate to buy the trick from the magician. He was willing to pay any price, but the magician refused. He wanted to pass all his knowledge only to his grandson, so the man begged him to perform it again. But the moment the magician covered the chair with the white cloth, David killed him with a single blow. In this situation, the man secretly stole the magician's notebook. 9 years later, a master of the floating chair illusion had become a legend in the industry, and he was David, the man who had killed the old magician. One day, a reporter came to interview him. He shook David's hand respectfully, but David instantly called out his trick.
Can I have my ring back, please?
Turns out the reporter was also a magic enthusiast. After an awkward exchange, the reporter handed back a ring. Then he offered to show David another trick. He asked David to write down a string of numbers on a piece of paper without showing him. Then he walked to the other side of the room and picked up a piece of fruit. David returned with a banana. The reporter pulled out a knife, cut it open to prove it was real, then cut his own palm and rubbed the blood onto the paper. The numbers David had written slowly began to appear. David initially pretended to be impressed, but then he tore the reporter apart. "It's clumsy and old-fashioned," he said, "but for a beginner, not bad. I don't know who you learned this from," the young man replied. He explained he got into magic because of his grandfather, but his grandfather had vanished 9 years ago. David froze. Could this be the old magician's grandson? He said, "Death is final condolences." David went stiff. He quickly made up an excuse to end the interview and promised to give him a signed book. While David went to grab it, the young man rushed to the safe and typed in the numbers David had written earlier, but the code didn't work. At that moment, David appeared behind him. "You don't really think some cheap psychology trick will get my password, do you?" Calmly, he added, "You need evidence to talk."
Killed him, didn't you? Who?
The young man replied that he'd bring the police with a warrant. Once he left, David panicked. He rushed to shut off the security cameras, then opened the safe, pulled out the old magician's notebook, and burned it. The next day, the police showed up, but it wasn't about the young man. It was because his wife had been murdered. David was stunned. They asked where he'd been. He said he was in his studio and had surveillance footage to prove it. Then he remembered he'd turned off the cameras the night before. The police grew even more suspicious. They soon noticed the safe in the corner and asked him to open it. David felt something was wrong, but he typed in the password, looked down at the ring on his finger, and slowly, everything started to make sense.